Coming from the States, where you have all these resources, why would you come to South Africa?
You're saying resources, but Africa has the source. America cannot function without the source. I want to plug into the source.
Today we're throwing it way back to the beginning of the C.Cast. For the sake of this episode, if you don't know who Elijah is, we need to do a little bit of an introduction. Emmy winner.
The first people that they send into to repair things are creatives.
Has worked on many different projects, the likes of Mary J. Blige, Lady Gaga, the Cheetah Girls.
So it's not a one-sided story anymore. It becomes a bigger to everybody want to lead with authority. Their leadership is the poorest leadership possible.
Assisting on the sets of Gomorrah, working with Connie Ferguson.
The vast population here is most likely on survival mode.
It's going to be a really, really spicy episode.
When you create a space where we're not in survival mode anymore, then you can come up with more creativity. The more you have artistic people come in and start setting standards, that creates a whole culture and environment for people to start with.
This Tyler situation, terminology of being colored, the word being acceptable in South Africa but not being acceptable in the States. What does it actually mean to be African? Are they African or are they American? Hey, welcome to the latest episode of the C.Cast. It's an absolute pleasure having you here today. Before we get into the next guest, I just want to give you a little bit of an idea of what this podcast is about. We are about connecting creativity and technology to uplift the African continent and connect the world to Africa. What we do is we chat to members of our communities. We give them a platform to share their story and to share how they are connecting Africa to the digital economy and the world to Africa. So before we get into this next guest, if you like our content, I just want to remind you to like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment down below about what you think about the conversation. If you want to get more involved in the community, you can also join the WhatsApp group by scanning the QR code. In this group, we'll be able to share opportunities, knowledge with you, and you'll be able to meet other like-minded people of the community. So yeah, we hope to see you in the group soon. Until then, let's get into the episode. Elijah, it's good to have you back on the podcast.
Yeah, how's it going, Josh?
So last episode, we did this remotely because you were out in the States. And when I heard that you were here in South Africa, the first thing I thought was we need to do a follow-up episode in person. And a lot of people that are watching this are now become accustomed to us with our new Inset Studio podcast. So I figured the perfect place for us to start is to just kind of reflect on the previous episode and give everyone a bit of a background into our story.
Okay.
So yeah, Elijah and I met here in Joburg, in the building that we're operating out of now, actually, funny enough. And yeah, we were busy shooting some content with a good friend of mine, Bongani, who's also a friend of the podcast. And Elijah was walking by wondering what's going on here.
Yeah.
And that's how we became to know one another. And yeah, Elijah, could you tell us a little bit more about that point in time and just like where you were at when we met?
Yeah, I mean, I walked through and I seen Josh and some other colleagues shooting. I don't know exactly what they were shooting, but they were shooting some amazing stuff. So I said, let me connect. Normally in the U.S., I do like what they call a mentorship program. And so I said, well, these some young guys maybe I can tap into. And so Josh led me to a lot of more information with, a lot of the young entrepreneurs here in Joburg and stuff, and his network that he had. Also, we actually went out and did a road trip where we had a couple of security people that took us out on the road, and I think we actually shut down, is it Marmonet?
Yeah,
and we shut down the street for a while and walked through and did some B-roll stuff just for some up-and-coming things that I'm working on. So that's how me and Josh met, and from that day, we just connected, and I actually interviewed him on a couple of things too. So yeah, the relationship is great, great relationship.
Yeah, no, it's an absolute pleasure having you back. And the reason why I was so interested in that introduction that we made was because obviously coming from the States to South Africa for the first time ever, I feel so privileged and honored to be a part of that initial experience. And it was very interesting to me because one of the things that we talk a lot about on this podcast since we've progressed is the concept of having an international perspective. a lot of people based in South Africa haven't had the opportunity of going abroad. And I'm pretty sure coming from the States, there might be a similar thing that you've experienced. The concept of what we do is really centered around a vision. And the vision is about connecting Africa to the digital economy and the world to Africa. So when I had the opportunity to speak to you, I was like, no, this is perfectly in alignment with our vision, because we want to connect Africa to the world and the world to Africa. And I found it very interesting that if you go across the ocean to somewhere like the States or even in the UK or wherever, there's a common interest. And I think that's what I find really interesting about our interactions with one another, is that kind of shared vision and shared goal. So I think to kind of kick off the conversation, it'd be really interesting to kind of go back to you coming to South Africa and what exactly was your intention, and what exactly were you kind of looking at getting out of the experience coming here and working in our environment?
Well, when you talk about shared interest, I'll tap into coming from Detroit, Michigan. Detroit, Michigan had what they call bankruptcy at one time. And what I've learned about shared interest is the first people that they send into to repair things are creatives and art people. So that's the first line of defense when you rebuild it. So you send in art people, you send in what they call hippie guys, and they actually start to set up a culture and stuff like that. So the common interest would be with Joburg actually, what it is today and what it's going to be tomorrow. The more you have artistic people come in and start setting standards, that creates a whole culture and an environment for people to start with. Then the next thing, the business guys show up and buy property and do other things with it. So even Black Brick here is really like a creative area for people to come. What's the term you use? Like collaborative type effort type place where you go and you meet other creatives. So I would say that's the beginning of the creative things that happen between me and you.
I relate it back to South African history. So our generation, being someone who was born in 97, we're a part of the born-free generation, the next generation post-apartheid. And obviously apartheid was a very destructive regime that kind of, it was something that we are rebuilding from still to this day. And it's very interesting that you mentioned that metaphor, because I feel like in South Africa, that's the current process that we're actually going through at this point in time. We, as young people, are the first generation that is now sort of building what it means to be a South African and a South African, what our culture is about and what is our shared vision. And I find it very interesting that you as a creative were kind of drawn to that. And I just wanted to get into that experience of you coming to South Africa. What was your goal to kind of come here and learn? What were you hoping to get out of it?
Well, I would say meeting people, number one, meeting people that's like-minded, meeting people that I would say there's a lot of entrepreneurs here, and there seems like a little small tech world that's happening here. So I know in things that's very foundational, if you say Joburg is a place where it's a lot of different, I would compare it to I would say it's Atlanta mixed with New York, with a little bit of San Francisco in there.
Okay.
There's a few things happening there.
Sorry, Elijah. I need to understand what that means. Someone that hasn't been to Atlanta or New York or San Francisco, what does that mean?
New York is the financial capital, I would say, of U.S., in terms of business. Wall Street and everything is there. I would think Joburg is probably the same thing, the financial capital of Africa or South Africa. And then if you want to say, if you want to take it even further back, you have what is called New York, right? So what about York? So the York from Europe, which is Great Britain or whatever, you have York there. And so then you have New York. So you can see the traces of culture being passed on to the United States. And so I would say that's the beginning of I would say that's the beginning of how Joburg and stuff. So you got the financial capital, then this actually being Africa. So you have the fact that it's I would say the culture of all the different tribes are here too. In South Africa. And South Africa has 12 or 13 different languages, I think, much more than that.
Yeah, 12 official languages.
12 official languages. And so Atlanta is more of a southern and more of a nice, a lot of the people migrated from the north and the west to Atlanta for, they had this thing called the Olympics at one time, and there's a lot of jobs that happened in Atlanta. So a lot of people just came and mixed in that area. So that's what you have is, so if you take the tribal aspect of Africa, of South Africa, merging, melting into Johannesburg. And so that's the same thing when you deal with Atlanta. You have most of the Americans from west, east, and north coming down to the south. So that's why Atlanta is not just a southern place. It has a lot of mixture of people from the north, which is New Yorkers and Midwest Detroiters and West and stuff like that. So I would say that's how I would explain that, so people can get a very good understanding how I'm collaborating those two things together.
Yeah, so sort of like a melting pot.
Yeah,
right?
and different kinds of melting pots. Like you got a financial, you have culture. Because a New Yorker is different from a Southern guy. People think that America is all the same. No, you have Midwest, you have North, you have South, you have West. And then actually that just means news, NEWS.
Yes.
North, East, West, and South. So that's what the news really is.
Let's go. We bring in the news to you here today. No, I like that. Yeah. So yeah, like what was very interesting to me, and when you were here, I was asking you a lot about your experience, because one thing that I know is true for many people that come and visit South Africa, and someone who's been in South Africa, is there's two different South Africas, in my opinion. Like you have Sandton, and that's literally the richest square mile in Africa, like home of all these multi-billion-dollar companies. And then literally 25 kilometers, not even 20 minutes down the road, you'll find Alex, where it's completely different situation. It's a township environment where you'll literally see goats like walking across the side of the road. So there's a very big contrast. And my experience of meeting you, my hope really was for us to show you both sides of South Africa, because a lot of the time tourists will come here and they'll go to Cape Town or they'll come to Sandton, and they'll kind of live in this quote unquote bubble, and they don't really get the opportunity to go out of it. Or maybe they do, maybe you go on like a tour to Soweto or whatever, but you're living a very curated experience of what it was. And that's what I loved about our experience going to the Maboneng precinct, because through that, we saw like what it really was, the nitty gritties. So I wanted to get a sense from you. Do you have that same sentiment in terms of there being two different South Africas? And like, what does that experience look like to you and mean to someone who's like coming to visit?
Well, I have to start off by saying that, most Americans, or I would call it, not even African Americans, but American Africans.
Okay.
Let's flip that
Interesting
around.
Distinguish.
Come here and, we look into this area, but now I'm looking out of it. So my eyes are tuned into being on the ground and actually looking the other way. And so we'll dive deeper into that, but that's really my perspective. Now I'm looking out of Africa and not into Africa.
And how's that perspective changed? Because when you came here, I assume it was more of a outward looking in.
Yeah.
And now comparing that to the inward looking out, what shift has happened?
Well, I would honestly say that the vast population here is pretty much at a point where I would say even the younger and the mid and the older people are most likely on survival mode, and they're on autopilot in survival mode. So when you actually can, in your safe space, say, well, let me, create a space where we're not in survival mode no more, then you can come up with more creativity. And, like what we talked about before about creativity and stuff like that. So we have some plans for that too. And being able to, when you squeeze a situation, like even in engineering, when you say, well, I'm gonna give you these 5 tools to make this product, then you can be more creative and more innovative. So I think that's what people don't even know, that they are more creative and more innovative here, but because they don't have, you got load shed, you got all these different things, so it creates different markets for different creativity. And so I think to not capitalize off of that, but actually to innovate off of that is a very strong thing, because it's, seeing the problems and then becoming the solution for that too.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because a lot of the time that mindset of scarcity is a double-edged sword. The one side of it is really operating from limitations forces you to be innovative and creative, which is something that we speak about repeatedly on this podcast, and really is what I view as Africa's secret sauce or differentiating factor, which makes our culture look different to people abroad, because the fact that we're able to create things with half the resources but has double the impact is really something that grabs people's attention. And I always use this example of, like, you'll see videos trending on TikTok of a kid coming from a village that's able to create a solar panel that's able to power their TV, let's say, for example. And I always think about, like, why does that video go viral? And why do you never see videos of a kid in the States doing the same thing going viral? And the reason why is because what that kid has done is it demands way more attention or praise because of the limitations that they had to overcome to get to that point. And it's a common topic that we talk about as well, which I would love to hear your opinion on, is that thing of viewing your limitations as your actual gift or your superpower. Because one thing that I've picked up on, and I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are around this coming from the States, is because you are in the States and you have access to unlimited resources, the way that you operate is very different to the way someone would operate here in South Africa. You have access to so much more things. So coming from the States, where you have all these resources, why would you come, like, to South Africa where there's limitation?
Well, these are control resources. So when you think about resources, you got layers to resources. So you got clean water, you got, electricity, you got all these infrastructural things that's so strong and so powerful in the States. And you would say, you're saying resources, but Africa has the source. So we're resourcing things from the source. So America cannot function without the source. So from that perspective, so people look at what they want. I want the resource, but what is the source? Damn. So that's the point that we need to get to. Africa has the source. So if Africa sat down, then we have to become a resource by ourselves. So you understand. So that point of view. So that should answer the question why I'm here. I want to plug into the source versus be the resource for something.
Yeah, and that's why we needed to have spatulas and wooden spoons and spikes, because we're cooking out here. We're dishing up the sauce.
We dished it up. We dishing it up.
That's interesting.
But to elaborate a little bit more off of that, I would say most individuals in the States don't even know the difference between what I just said, because they was born into things that were structured. And the structure didn't actually come from the history of it, us as Africans that came to America, and how America was built off of free labor. And from that, so if we stop everything right now and make everybody work for free, and somebody build off of that, then you have a whole class of people that, becomes whatever, elite or whatever, and then the rest of the people get the peanuts or whatever. So America was built off of that. And so that's why you look at us and say, well, hey, man, it's a powerful country. But it was built off of free labor for a long time. And so here, South Africans, it wasn't built off of free labor. It was more colonized from Europe. I don't know, South Africa, British, or what was it?
Yeah, British came and colonized, and there was also Dutch influence as well.
Yeah, so when it's different from, we were never colonized in that way. We was born into something that was, we was integrated into it versus being colonized. It's different. It's a slow process with the colonization part of it. And so we are part of the system because we understand that. We understand, like, what's going on in America, but it was built from free labor. So if I take a bunch of people and build it off free labor, that, hey man, I got a nice, I'm looking good,
Yeah.
things are great for me. But then we benefit from that too. The people that built, we benefit from those things. But how are we benefiting from that now? I think most of us are waking up and understanding that we have to plug back into the source. And the source is, and what I mean by that in terms of the world source of economics and where things come from and where we at in technology today, the source would be Africa, because most of the minerals and the things that we need to produce things, if that's China, you got China, Russia, you got all the different countries coming here because they actually want to get a hand on the source. Because if they had the source, there's no interest here.
So it's a very interesting topic that you're bringing up here. And what I'm hearing you say is that you understand that abroad and coming from a first world country, you see the resources that are coming from Africa and going to that home place where you come from. And you can see that way of things is not sustainable, which is why you want to come and plug back in. Is that?
Well, I'll say this to even take it further. I mean, the fact that I gave you the history of that free labor is the one that produced America is showing you that we was the source. The whole point. The whole point is they use people as a source. So the African source been in America the whole time. So now looking at the resource of it, the resourcing of the source.
Yeah.
Now we back in Africa, being a part of where I actually came from.
So what's the purpose? You mentioned one way that you described it was plugging back into it. What does that mean to you?
You talking about specifically what I mean? I would say building relationships, building communities. And what I mean by building community is like this is a community that we build. This is a creative community. Taking the same things that I actually started there and actually expanding on it here. I had a program, not even a program, a mentoring thing called The Shed. And me being a musician, and most musicians out there know that what a shed is actually sitting down and exchanging information and chords and musical composition with each other. And you just sit there and everybody's standing around, they get a chance and they do it. Nobody's above nobody. It's a learning and a teaching point of view. And so the shed.
So I need to jump in there because I've never heard of that concept of a shed before.
Okay. Well, maybe it's a U.S. thing.
It might be, but I think it brings up a deeper topic because we were talking earlier about the mindset of scarcity. And what you'll find in South Africa is a lot of people don't want to share that knowledge or share opportunities because you operate from a mindset of there's not enough. So I need to hold on to what I have. And this ties into another question I was going to ask you. Maybe this is a bit premature. Maybe you want to come into this a bit later. But this concept of some of the lessons that you've learned coming from America, coming here and seeing how we can do things a bit differently, or what can we learn from the States. But I think the one thing that I do identify is that kind of theme of scarcity versus abundance mindset. And this is why I was saying earlier, like going to the States or going to a first world country is such an important experience for people to have, and vice versa, because by someone coming from South Africa, going there, you start to see how people operate differently, how you have these shared spaces. And I think I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on that.
I would have to start with a controversial statement of like saying that, and this is not to hurt nobody, but if you really think about it, South Africa, to me, not physically, but mentally, is still in the 80s.
Sure.
And so when I say 1980s, we're referring to the mindset of how, the scarcity of information and how it's being distributed and all that stuff. The diversity of people, and it hasn't caught up yet. It's a lot of people here, but it hasn't caught up to where everybody has the same access. And that's what I mean. Not mentally, back in the 80s. It's just saying like, so in the U.S., pretty much everybody done caught up. Everybody's kind of like synced up with each other and caught up with everything. Here, there's a lot of diversity. And how do I know that? Because I'm in the community. I'm in the community. I've been in places. I've been different. I've been all over. I've been in Cape Town. I've been in Durban. I've been all through this place. And here in Joburg, I would say You know, and what took me there was I was working on a project for I ain't gonna say Netflix. I was working on a project, a local project, and with that project, it took us into different neighborhoods and different situations, and I could see that there was so much diversity between people, and so that's how I got the understanding of like what I'm saying about, you know, the '80s and stuff like that. It's so far. You go down the street and it's like I would call it past, present, and future, and that example would be for me when I was in Egypt, in Cairo one time, and I was there, and I'm in a Mercedes Benz, you know, driven around, you know, and bulletproof, whatever you want to call it, and you know, and then right next to me there's a horse and carriage,
Literally.
you know, right there. It's just, and then there's a red light, what you guys call a robot, and it's looked like it's from the future. So past, present, and future right in front of you. Then I'm looking out on the balcony, and I'm looking through. There's the Nile River in front of me, and then across from me I see the pyramids, past, present, and future right in front of me. And so that's what I mean about here. It's just like it's that diversity. Everybody's not equal, and everybody hasn't caught up with that.
Yep. What goes you through your mind when you see that?
Well, it's a lot, man. It's like, cause you know, because you're in the past. But to be honest with you, it's only the present. To be honest with you, people say past, present, future. It's because that's how we see time. But it's only the present, really. If you think about it, you got today, then you got tomorrow, then you got yesterday. Same thing. It's all today.
Mm.
So from that perspective, but I had to explain it so everybody can get that point: past, present, and future.
And like when you see this happening, do you think of any like opportunities that arise from this?
Oh, it becomes the subject matter becomes like a lot of opportunities to happen, because you got the creatives, like I said, the first people that actually start the process. My opportunity would be, you know, sometimes I don't want to reveal everything, but my opportunity.
Say it without saying.
I'm trying to. So I take my opportunity and run. I would say, the first thing, any opportunity that you see, you know, you look at what's wrong. What is the problem?
Mm.
So the problem is, even with tech. So we're talking about this. So you got technology, which is the knowledge of tech. So how am I going to get this knowledge of tech to the people that don't have the knowledge of tech? And people say, well, they don't have money. So how do we create a system where people can get information as fast as we get it on the phone? Everybody has a phone, but here, I give you an example. You know, paying for data.
Mm.
What is that, man? I mean, that's 90s, you know what I'm saying, for us. You know, paying for data, I mean,
data is cheaper in America than it is in South Africa.
We just
How
do a
wild
plan.
is that?
It's a plan. It's a all-in-one plan. It's like, okay, full data is like you get it unlimited.
Yeah.
You know, I haven't even heard nobody talk about unlimited data. It's always going to the store, get this, you know, you got it. But in one way, not to be like America. So to not say, okay, let's just change it over to that. I'm just saying, like, maybe it may happen a different way.
Mm.
We may move it into a different format. But the fact that I can come from this region over here and look at it this way, I can see how it built from here to there and how it happened. So I do have insight, because it's kind of like somebody coming back from the future and saying, hey, man, you know, we did that before.
Mm.
This is how you can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it ties into that mindset of scarcity, because you can kind of see where it comes from.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at how we don't have unlimited access to things, why people would have that scarcity mindset.
You're right. You want 100%, because I have conversations all the time about unlimited and limited and stuff. And I've learned over the few months to be like, hey, you know, that can go a long ways, you know. And then I'm used to like abundance in a certain manner, you know. I turn to, perfect example, brushing my teeth. You know, just brush my teeth, but I keep the water on and go back and forth. Nah, don't do that. You need to turn the water off, because there's a scarcity of water. But You know, where I'm from, there's a well around the corner and we just use it and recycle. You know what I'm saying? It's different. So it's not actually being privileged from one side. When you think about, well, man, you just privileged, man. No, I just told you that the source is here. You've been blinded by the other things to not see the source.
Do you think that what you're talking about now is kind of the source of this beef that we're seeing online between America and South Africa? I don't know if you've seen any of
No, I
that
haven't really.
online.
Take me there. I want to know a little
Yeah,
bit.
okay, so let's unpack that a little bit. So I think a lot of it is centered around this Tyler situation with
Okay.
this terminology of being colored versus, and the word being acceptable in South Africa but not being acceptable in the States.
Okay.
And it's really sparked this whole conversation around, like, what does it actually mean to be African? Like, is someone who is born in America that identifies African American, like, are they African or are they American? And now, like, obviously, because of the past that we come from, it's a weird conversation to have, because it's like, because of the things that were not in majority of our control back then, the way things turned out, it's created this weird identity crisis situation that we're trying to work out. And when you look at how we've plugged that problem or that past into the current day technology that we have, where you can have someone in America having a conversation with someone in South Africa about what the word colored means, it's opened up this debate that's currently going on.
This is a good one too. I think it's a good it's a good thing to talk about, honestly. So because most people that have the conversation don't have enough information and knowledge about what the conversation should be about. I would say number one, we have to go all the way back. When you name somebody, you have the power. So let's just start with that. Let's start at the source. Where is the source of how this even happened? Not even the color thing, just what the naming thing in political. So policy tends to name things and put categories on things because now it becomes the power source of that particular name.
You kind of determining someone else's identity for them in a way.
Exactly, by giving them a name.
Yes.
And how do I know that? I know that because it already happened to us. When somebody name you and you become what they call lost, like you don't even know what your name really is, then so they're just doing the same thing. It's like a loop. Let's continue. When we say reality, it's just we saying I want to go back into the loop that I know, because it's your reality. What is the ality? So you understand what I mean by that? Re has nothing to do with ality. The re makes it backward loop, continue to do the same thing over and over again. So when you're talking about a naming source, when somebody names you, then they own you. It's simple. The power comes to them. So like us sitting here talking about the name color gives the power back to the person that started the political thing called color. The name, not the culture. Because I've learned that it's a culture. So color here is a culture. They want to make it a name, and then now you got the argument.
So would you say that's the reason why a lot of American people have a problem with the word colored, is because it's basically a name in the U.S. context?
Yeah, it's not a
culture.
Exactly, and that's what the confusion is.
Yes.
And so if you say white and black never existed until America started, did you know that? There was no political. There was Portuguese. There was Spanish, there was Britain, there was all these different kinds of people from Europe that came to America. And then how did they turn into white? That's a political category because because now the person owns that who came up with it. Now we're gonna make everybody black and white, and that's it. And then to even take it even further, black is the absorption of all colors. White is the reflection. So that's not even a color spectrum. When have you seen white and black in the rainbow? It don't exist. So you see, they create false things that don't exist and fit you in it, and then now it becomes what they want it to be. Now they can control it. Back to who's the source that made that name.
And who is they? When we talk
We know
about
who they is. They is people that's the elites that understand systematics. You know, first of all, so let's talk about source again. If I say GM car, who made a Cadillac? GM made it. So GM is the designer of Cadillac. So if I want to talk to anybody about a Cadillac, I'm not going to talk to the Mercedes people. I'm going to talk to the people that made it at GM, General Motors, which is in Detroit. So that's what I'm saying when I'm talking about these things like source. You have to trace it back to the source. I can't give you a name who they is, but I know there's a they or I or
someone benefits from us not agreeing with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that could be a good way to kind of see. But also, we don't want to open up like the whole conspiracy theory thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing that's important is finding that eye to eye understanding. And I think for a lot of South Africans, they will say that they feel as though, and let me not say they, because I'm a South African, so let me own it, right? We would say online that like there's sort of a perspective as though we feel as though there's two definitions that exist of this word.
Mm-hmm.
The one is the naming and the one is the culture definition.
Mm-hmm.
So now a lot of people, there's kind of this power struggle online to see who owns the word and what does it mean, which, coming back to what you said, I think is a good thing, because let's have these conversations and let's come to a common ground. But what I think happens a lot of the time is a lot of people don't have the objective of finding that common ground. The objective is kind of to say, well, this is how I know the word, so this is how it is. Yes. And then it's that constant like back and forth.
Everybody wants the symptoms and not the source. Like the source will give you the raw material. It's like the raw material, the name. Where did this come from? Like, no, why isn't, you should ask the question, where did this come from?
The word colored.
Yeah, where did it come from? Where and then start from there. And nobody's saying it. They're just saying, they're just in the category saying like, and fighting about a name and culture at the same time, And then another thing I would say, just people even having the time to even have that conversation. I was in Cape Town, and man, I would consider, okay, I'm black. I can go black. I'm colored too. I'm all of that. So because if you put it into that,
someone will come at you for saying that, hey.
Well, hey, but they don't know my heritage.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So if you
what does colored mean to you might be different.
For me, colored in America means that, hey, you know what I'm saying, there's a mixture. And we all know most people that came from the journey and then Atlantic slave trade have some mixtures in it, even if it's with the tribes. So tribal mixtures is another mixture, which takes you into color. To like, but the name color, it's like this ownership, like color. I gotta be color. You know what I'm saying? And so I got a lot of friends, so hey man, they might see this and they're gonna know exactly what I'm saying. Like, but I do understand the culture of it. You know what I'm saying? The culture is like, it's a whole nother thing. It has nothing to do with and so if it's colored, then okay, let's pull out the traditional people that they say that's colored in South Africa. Take them out of South Africa, put them back in their homeland. What would they be?
That's a very good question.
You see what I'm saying? What would they be in another land? So you go back to, you got Indian, you got European, you got Native African people here, you got Dutch, you got all these different people. So when you extract it and you put them back in their homeland, then what? Are they colored there?
But where is the homeland?
That's the point.
That's the question that I like, because it's so complex. Like the whole conversation is very complex.
Before it was mixed, before it became that culture. So that's what I'm referring to. I'm not referring to right now. I'm referring to like before it became what we call the name. What you guys call the name that, because we call it, this derogatory term for us, because they gave it to us, and it was just like, we don't know who you guys is, so here you go. Here's another name. So we've been named so many names, So I decided what I want to be. Let me decide what I want to be. Let me just put a name on me, an origin.
Hey, hold on. I just need to remind you very quickly to like, share, and subscribe, and leave a comment down below about what you think about this episode. We need to be able to tell the algorithm on YouTube that we are creating content that is valuable. So please engage with this content, whether you're listening to it on YouTube or on Spotify or whatever platform, please engage. It just helps us reach more people, brings more people into the community, which means more access to knowledge and opportunities for you, a member of the community. So please don't forget to engage on this video or this audio podcast and leave a like, comment, or subscribe and give it a share. Thank you so much. We'll hop back into the episode. Yeah. And I think that's where the whole thing of like taking power back comes from, right? It's being able to take back that name and own it for what you want it to be, which is kind of what we've seen in other cultural, terminologies that we get out there. But
so all my South African colored people that I know and great friends with, hey, I think you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the whole purpose of this should be to understand what each others are saying, because ultimately at the end of the day, I think what happens a lot of time is we kind of divide ourselves based off of the misunderstandings that we have, or I might believe the word to mean one thing and someone might believe the word to mean another thing. But I think the conversation should really be centered around, I mean, coming back to our goal and objective to connect Africa to the digital economy and the world to Africa.
Exactly.
The goal is to uplift Africa as a continent. And I think that there's a very, there's a shared objective between a lot of people in the States, in the UK, that have African heritage, that have that shared vision of uplifting the continent. Just like there's a lot of people in South Africa or other African countries that also want to see the continent uplifted. And I think that's ultimately, to me, is what I think should be the important conversation of how do we work with each other to make that shared goal become a reality. And I think these conversations of defining the words and
this is a word game, because we speak English, there's a lot of different terms that's actually not clarified because we speak English, There's a lot of things we just say and we don't even know what it means. Community.
Yeah.
Common unity. Technology. Tech, the knowledge of tech. It's just like, it's these compound words that we just make them into whatever. But now we looking at it and we diving deeper. As you know, I'm a source person. So I'm always thinking about the root of something, the source of something, because that's the only way you're going to understand what's happening up top. Yeah.
So my question is from what you're saying, I feel like we agree in a sense, right? We have this shared vision, we have this shared goal. I mean, that's where you and I are connected. And that's where a lot of people that we bring on the podcast kind of connect, with. And my question then becomes, okay, well, how do we take where we are now and achieve that reality? And that's where I want to hear about you being here in South Africa and how you are bringing that vision into reality.
Well, the first thing, if I wanted to come to South Africa and just live as an American, then I just come and I don't interact with people. I don't connect with them. I just come and put my agenda on them or my program. That was never my goal. My goal was to integrate and source things and connect, and whatever other things I can do to help. I've already started it by actually working with people here. I've started, doing things in it. I would say collaborating. That's the term I use. Collaborating and consulting with people, and bringing what is like not seen in America, like the behind the scenes stuff, the stuff that makes stuff cook a certain way, the ingredients. We might have the same ingredients, but we might not cook them long, or we might add this to that and do the different recipe. And so to be able to collaborate with that and with people, and then you have to do it smartly. It's about leadership too. You can't come in and say, well, hey, do what I need you to do. Most likely, it's not going to happen that way. You have to work in the middle. You have to work in the middle of the environment. Like I would just say, most people that I've worked with, they don't know me totally. They just know I might just be a camera guy or a guy just kicking some knowledge about something. That's how you enter in. You enter in the most powerful tool I've seen is to actually take one of your skills and work. I'll give you an example. Like when I was working for something like HBO and different, people and stuff like that, I get a call, and even though I'm a producer myself, I do music and I do a lot of little things that works in the industry. Another producer calls me. So do I become the producer when I go to him? No. I become whatever my skill is for him. If I'm just somebody that programs sound effects, I'm just the guy programming sound effects. But what did it do? He got me in the door for collaboration and using all of my skills. So I may come in there to the door to do sound effects, but I might end up doing a lot more. Because how could I leave the rest of myself outside of the door? Because I brought my complete self into the door with all the skills that I have. And so that's what leadership is. You rise from the top. Not to be employed, but to be deployed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. No, I like what you said now about like kind of humbling yourself, knowing that you're coming into a different situation where maybe you might be known for X, Y, and Z in a different environment, being aware of the fact that it's a different situation here and you kind of have to start from scratch in a way. And that's a very interesting experience, because someone who has got a lot of experience in the States that's coming to South Africa and having to build up that reputation from the ground, like how what would you say are some of the lessons that you've learned from that experience?
Well, it's very collective. I've met a lot of great people, It's almost like undercover boss. Like you go in and you meet people, they don't even know that you are a boss, that you have the same thing that they have, that you might even have more. But the thing is that because you humble yourself, you see different problems, you see different ways that you can solve these problems, which gives you more insight on how to deal with when you're building your company, or when you're dealing with employees, or when you're dealing with people that you're collecting. So I would say that.
And working in the South African environment, what would you say are some of the lessons that you've learned abroad that we could benefit from here? That we don't necessarily, how we would say it in South Africa is we'd say we haven't carved.
What that mean?
So like when you say you haven't carved, it's like you haven't, the light bulb hasn't gone off in a certain way, or you don't understand something to its full extent. So like, what would you say, like, you've seen that we could
my last
improve on?
episode that we did, I talked about purpose, passion, inspiration, and influence. So I'm gonna add to that. The next phase will be perspective over perception.
Okay.
And then the other part would be motivation over manipulation. So let me explain that.
Okay.
So perspective is, when you're doing anything, music, any creative thing, you got to have that's like the truth of something. It's a perspective. It is what it is. You can't change it. I'm sitting in front of you. That's what it is. Now my perception could be anything. So adding to that, if I want to take the South African marketplace and the creativity to the next level, I would say perspective over perception. Perception is like, yeah, I got this, I know this. It's your own thing, but you got to get your perspective right.
The truth. What is the truth?
Yeah.
Bringing it back. Sorry, I know this is a very touchy subject, but I think it's so important that as South Africans and as Americans, we come to a shared understanding of truth, which is why I love the internet, because the internet creates a space for us to have these conversations. As difficult as it is, as much as there are arguments and disagreements, I think it's a necessary process to work through to come to some sort of shared understanding of what we agree to be the truth. And it kind of ties into that colored conversation, because what is the perspective there? Because we can see the two perceptions. The two perceptions is it's a culture. The other perception is it's a name. What is the truth?
Well, back to at the end of the day, the truth for society and the truth for not the actual truth, but the truth that they want to make it is they just want it to be black or white. But already actually destroy what that was. So you got to destroy what what category they want to push people into in order to get to where it's trying to go. So if you can create a black and white scenario, then you create another one, then you're gonna create another one. It's just gonna keep going.
It's in this loop.
So we need to go back to the origins of the original thing. The original thing was just tribal. It was just pretty much a tribal. Imagine this. I mean, imagine you in the Swana tribe or whatever. You're there, but you're a white guy, but you see the point I'm saying?
Yeah.
You learn the culture.
Yeah.
So the point of the matter is that people finding out what tribe they want to be a part of, and dealing with that versus like just this is political, man. This is a political situation. Black and white is political.
So what you're saying, the truth is that it's a word that can be used to distract from the real objective.
100%. Like I give you an example. I say this: if I go to Europe, would I ever be called a European?
Yeah. And I'm here to contrast that.
I'm just saying, how are we gonna deal with that?
It's a weird conversation.
But it is. It's like,
because it's weird because like I'm European in South Africa, but like if you were to ask me of my understanding of Europe, it would be nothing compared to an African who's grew up in my like ethnicity space, which is Portugal. And they would probably know a lot more about what it means to be Portuguese. So now it's created this weird,
but it's
we have a label of what you are, but it doesn't match the reality. It doesn't match the perspective.
That's what I'm talking about. That's the point of, perception. I mean, perspective over perception. And then back to the second thing I said, you have motivation. So, and that's in leadership. So you say, do I want to manipulate this person to do what I need him to do, or do I want to motivate? So when I'm speaking to this South African thing, you asking me the questions, I'm speaking from the perspective of leadership, not from, everybody has a form of leadership. So when you're talking about leadership, we have to talk about this. We have to talk about changing your perspective. Like, most of the people are just locked into this world or whatever. And then even talking about, the 80s, like I said, and the 90s and all the different times that these things happen. If you study these cultures and stuff that happened in America, you find out you don't have to repeat. You really don't have to repeat the same thing over and over again. But they want you to. It's healthy for them. It's more economic for somebody to spend the same thing they spent there. So imagine now America becomes something else. And now people come here and spending the same thing that they spent in America. And you're like, whoa, this is new. This is nice. No. Africa is unique, and it has the ability to source its own things and create what they need to create.
So how do we not repeat that cycle? How do we break it and make sure that we are able to move beyond that cycle of repeating?
I think expand, like these things here will create, because people will take the information and the knowledge and the wisdom from this and start to maybe, if I turn somebody light bulb on, like boom, oh man, that was a great thing, and at that point, it just changed. Because then they're gonna go out and change. They're gonna changes within ourselves. We have to go out and make the change ourselves. It's a mental thing first. It starts with our minds. We have to change things first.
Yeah. And I think the first step is to kind of be open to listening to someone else's perspective and accepting that it's different to your own. Like, just because you believe something to be one way doesn't necessarily mean that someone else is also going to believe that same thing. They might have a different definition to that, and that's based off of their experiences and their background, where they come from. I think the way to kind of move forward and to connect with one another is to listen. But I think we struggle with that sometimes.
I want to input, belief is the highway to actually knowing. If you stay on the highway of belief, you would never get to knowing. I know that you're sitting in front of me. I don't believe that.
Interesting. I don't know, like unpack that for me. Like belief is the highway to knowing.
So you got to believe something to actually know.
Right.
Do you have on a black shirt?
Mm.
Or do I believe you have on a black shirt?
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So it's just the highway. So you got to start off with like on the road. You know, belief is the thing that get everybody going. Like, man, I believe. But do you know?
Yeah, there is a difference.
Yeah, because Noah's walking into the authority of it. It's the same thing when you tap back to source versus resource. People always talking about the resource, man. What about the source?
Where does it come from?
Same mindset, same person. In leadership, for me, mostly what I do, when I pull a team of people together, first thing I do is try to find out what their personality is. Like, because understanding somebody's personality and how they think in the order of the way they think actually will bring out how you build your team and how you. Nobody's interested in knowing who the other person is that they're building, that they're working with. Or so if you're leadership, you're doing it this way. If you're the boss, everybody want to lead with authority. Like, I want to lead because my dad gave me this company and I'm the boss now. That leadership is the poorest leadership possible. You have to start in the middle with the relationship, and relationships are based on needs.
Well, I'd say it's also based on understanding, because once you have a shared understanding, you can then build trust.
Yep.
And once you've got trust, then you are able to have a relationship, because a relationship cannot exist without trust. And then that relationship is what allows people to collaborate and work together. That shared trust, knowing that when I pass the ball over there, the person's going to be there to receive it. And when they pass the ball to me over here, I'm going to be there to receive it. Through doing that, you start to enter this flow state. And when you have that flow state and you're working towards a shared common goal, that's when you start to see that goal become into reality. And I think that's something that we sometimes lack here, because coming back to that scarcity mindset, it's difficult to trust.
It's hard to trust if you have scarcity, because you don't know if you're going to get it tomorrow.
Exactly.
So it's like the trusting, to me, like when I say relationships based on needs, you cannot have a relationship unless somebody needs something from you. Now that sounds like, whoa, man, how, but that's the truth. And I'm gonna give you an example. If you're actually a fish, you don't need air, you need water. That's what I mean by that's the base relationship. The air needs the bird, and the bird need the air. So it's like when you go into nature. I'm just saying natural stuff. You can. There's so many analogies that you can make when you talk about this stuff. But so when you start really getting into that's so trust has a time period to it. It's like when I see you every time, then now you're building trust. So it's a building block. Trust is built on is the building, and then you can do what they call a trust prison. So now after you didn't trusted that person, then something happened and you don't trust them anymore. Now you're gonna stay in the trust prison until they let you out.
Sure. I think when it comes to that thing that you're mentioning of it being based on needs, I think yes, but a sustainable relationship also needs to be based on giving as well.
100%.
Because it has to become a symbiotic process where I have something that you need.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Which you give to me, but you also have something that I need, which I can give to you. Now, bringing that back to our conversation of America, Africa, connecting.
That's exactly
what is it that you can see that we need that you have? And what is it that you can see that we have that you need?
Gotcha. That's a tough question, man. But I'm gonna try to fulfill that one for you. Man.
These are my favorite questions, by the way. I love it. Like, I know I've asked a good question when the person has to sit and think about it. Like, that's when you know it's a good question.
I didn't think about that yesterday, Yeah, man. What do I bring back to well, I would say this. I bring, number one, my skills. I bring my personality, I bring my leadership, I bring all those things back. Like even me sitting here with you right now, there's something that makes us have to have this conversation because I bring perspective. My strongest skill is perspective, and my second skill is I bring source and I bring root things. So my personality is built off of strategy too. So I strategize everything, I analyze things. So those skills are very needed in the marketplace. And so even when you build a business, I would say a kaleidoscope of things that I would bring, and I just gave you a few.
And what would you say, like, okay, you've told me what you bring, right? As Elijah, I'm asking more of like a holistic view. Like I'm thinking more of first world, second world relationship, America connecting with Africa. If you were to view it from that higher level perspective, what would you say that America has to bring to Africa? And what would you say Africa has to bring to America?
I would look at what we talked about in the beginning. America is still a resource. Africa is a source. So that's what ties us together. It's like we cannot exist without each other. The reason why America became America is because of this export-import things that they brought from, and the way they structured things. It's a small country. America is not a huge country. It's a small country. Africa has a marketplace of almost 2 billion people here. So the economy here should be stronger than this little small place. But this small place controls all these other things. So how does that work? That works from economics. So opening the eyes of the African and saying that this is actually more valuable than me giving you $1. And actually taking the source, and I'll just go back to the original thing, land. We stand on what? Land right now. This building is built on land. We can't even have this conversation unless we're on land. So we can have it on water, but land is the first thing. So the resource that I would say America would need to bring back to Africa, Africa need to bring is, first thing is the land concept.
Okay.
It's abundance in land, which means that it's the territory is so big. It's like, why don't we explore the territory? Why don't we do more with it? Why don't we reallocate? Why are we all concentrated in one part of the land? So all of that needs to be like thought of in a way where, because it's enough land for everybody. So land, number one. Without land, you have nothing. We can't even have the conversation. You understand what I'm saying? We're not floating in the air right now. We actually connected to the ground in a building, which is somebody owns this land, so we can have this conversation.
So when you say land, is it more of like, America must make land more accessible for Africans, or I'm just trying to see how it ties.
Well, I'm saying like the say that again.
So like when it comes to like land, right? Because the question that I was asking was, what does America have to offer Africa? And you did mention an important point, because a lot of the time it's like, it would be money, right? America will come here and say, we're going to give you a whole bunch of funding, aid, and for the aid, we want this to happen and blah, blah, blah. So a lot of the time it's seen as like money that is the thing that's...
Well, let me pinpoint on it. I would say manufacturing.
Yeah.
So manufacturing the resources that you have. So I think people from America understand manufacturing because America was built on manufacturing. Then it went to China. So then it went other places that was cheaper, cheap labor. So, but America actually was the industrial revolution where everything became industrialized. So America can say, okay, let's take the resources and actually manufacture these things so they don't have to be shipped out. I would say that. That's number one.
Yeah. But not only that, I also think like the resources are also useful, right? So like there's so many, I always think about like Disney and these big production houses.
Are you referring to like the technical, the creative stuff? Yeah, I would say.
Well, no, not necessarily. Like, let me land this point. Let me land this point. So, like, you have an endless wealth of stories that are hidden here in Africa that haven't been told. And the reason why they haven't been told is because there's just a lack of resource. So the source is the story. The resource is the funding to create a movie about that story. So like my thing is like, how do we connect those two things together? Because I think that there's a huge opportunity in that if we're able to tell these stories. People want to learn new things. They want to hear new stories. People are tired of seeing the same old movie being recycled every 20 years. They want to see something fresh and something new. And there's a lot of interest in Africa as a continent. So I don't know. Maybe you can tell me if that's what you think.
No,
I
think
think
that's
could
very.
potentially
I
be the
think
thing
that's
that
the
connects us.
to not cut you off. That is actually one of the reasons that I came here to actually expand and close the gap between, like, you know, what I think about Africa and make. I want to know what's happening in Africa, not what I think or what I believe. And so storytelling and building in the marketplace, it's the beginning of everything, because most people in the information age, you have to create the story, and you have to create the documentaries and the truth and put it out there so it can expand. And so we have the job of being content creators, or it's different terms for, you know, ambassadors, or all kind of terms that we have, to actually go out and gather. Let's make up a term: story collectors. So we go out and we collect stories, and we bring them back and we share the stories. You know, it used to be around the campfire, but now we have so many other resources to do that. So I would say the resources that's in America, the money or the people, because all it is people that do this for money. So if we can get people to start the fire, then I think it's kind of like electrical engine that happens, where you take magnets and you put things together. And if you start it, it'll actually run forever. So it's the same concept of sustainable mindsets versus things that need all these other things to spark it. Every time I got to start the fire again, I need gas. I need this, I need that. But let's think more sustainable things. And I think Africa has the ability to be more sustainable because we already did that. Let's do something totally different. Sustainable living, sustainable this, which is basically back to a lot of stuff, you know, food supply and all that stuff. But still do it in the indigenous way, because it wasn't bad the way they did it. Us taking responsibility. Let's say, for me personally, if I build my own house, it's sustainable. Then I'm not dealing with nothing that nobody else needs. I'm sustaining the whole thing myself. I think the way the earth was put together was like that in the beginning. But now we have these different systems that allow us to be mass. It's like selling water to the well. Like, the water is right here, but I'm still trying to sell you water. I'm trying to sell you air when I breathe it all the time. So sustainable living, and that's, I think, that reprogramming to not say, I want to be like the West. You're just going to produce. You can look at what it produced and know what the outcome going to be, which is South Africa's headed down that road. But you guys have a dividing line to say, okay, man, you can make a decision, because we're having these conversations. And I think the biggest thing with Americans or American Africans or African Americans coming here, or whoever Americans coming here, you can see that there is some knowledge that needs to be exchanged, vice versa. And in that, it becomes a distributed story or collaborative story. So it's not a one-sided story no more. It becomes a bigger market. If I come here and we talk about things in America, and then we also talk about things here, we have a bigger story. It's a bigger audience now. It's not just in Africa anymore. It's in America and in Africa now. So I think that collaboration is the thing that we're talking about.
100%. And I think that's the way that we are able to offer value and create that symbiotic kind of relationship that feeds into one another, that grows the pie for everyone. And now, having spoken on that collaboration, like we've spoken a bit about, your journey when you started here. We've spoken a bit about, you know, how your perspective has changed and developed throughout your experience of being in South Africa and working with South Africans over the last year or so. My next question then would become, looking forward to the future, how do you plan to continue fostering this culture of collaboration and connecting, you know, what the States has to bring to South Africa, and then also, you know, bringing that back into what the States has to gain from South Africa?
We have to open the gates up, and the gates is the understanding. Number one, I'm just one person that's coming here, but I have influence. So for me to be to sit here and have this conversation with me, somebody that don't even know me is going to get to know me, and vice versa. Somebody going to know you. They're going to hear a conversation. They're going to be like, this guy's in South Africa. Who is this guy? You know, vice versa. It's like,
why is he white?
That's the point. The point that I'm saying is like, in the conversations and everybody is trying, they don't know. It's not, but the internet is opening up and it's understanding, but having a real talk, not an edited talk. You know what I mean by edited? Like, you know, as an editor, I can go ahead and grab 4 or 5 words and make up whatever, you know, TikTok, all this stuff. They got ways to, you know, AI and stuff. It can make whatever it want. But that's the foundation I'm standing from.
Yeah. That real connection, that real exchange of knowledge. And do you have any like projects that are coming in the future that we should be aware of, or that you want to like mention?
Yeah, there's a few things coming up. In my past visit, my first visit actually when I met you, I went back to the drawing board, and I came up with a project that I'm gonna start here exclusively here because of all the different tribes and the landscape. And actually finding out and working in the production with certain movies that I've worked with here, I found out that the landscape of South Africa have vast types of different ways, and so or different landscapes that you can do different things. So instead of traveling to all these other places, you can do it all in South Africa. And so I said, there's a project that I came up with called The Return of the Royals.
Okay.
And we can go in depth with that later, at a later time, once I've got it off the ground. And it spinned off of watching some of the royalty that was already embedded in South Africa started to rise into the political world and actually being noticed, because it's really upside down. The system came in and turned it upside down. It was the opposite. It was actually royalty first, then the system, but now it's upside down. So the return of royals, that means that things are returning.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And
Yeah.
it's that circle, right?
Yeah.
Coming back to fruition. The wheel always spins full circle. So I'm keen to hear more about this project. But before we wrap up, I've just got a few questions for you. And these ones are these ones aren't as hectic as intense,
so
I feel like this conversation
breathe right now. We're like,
yeah. But okay.
Philosophy. We've been going through a lot of stuff, man.
We've unpacked some very deep things here, and I think we've probably only just scratched the surface of it. And I think we'd probably need to let it marinate for a bit. Maybe constantly come back and revisit these topics as we progress. But I think for me personally, it's been enlightening to hear what your experience has been like as an American coming into South Africa and working in our environment, and seeing what you've experienced and how it's impacted your perception perspective, let me say perspective, and also how it's impacted mine as well, and how we kind of finding this common ground which we can leverage to achieve that shared goal that we keep mentioning. So I'm keen to see the collaboration. I'm keen to see this project and how it plays out. But before we wrap up, what is one African dish that you cannot get enough of?
Oh, man. Well, I'm a fish guy.
Okay.
So biryani fit with the fish. I know that has chicken in it, but biryani is good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've never had fish biryani, but chicken biryani, bro. I had one friend that literally bought me biryani for my birthday, and it was like the best gift I've ever received in my life. I've never been so happy
biryani.
before.
And what do I compare that to in America? Okay, so is it pop or is something else? That to me tastes. I would just say it tastes like grits.
Okay.
You know, which is some maize, is white maize with something, but
Samp.
in America, huh?
Samp is samp.
But it's white and it's dense. I don't know the name of it. I can't think of the name of it right now.
Okay, Milipop.
It's some kind of pop or whatever.
Okay.
But hey, but I think it's compared to its grits in America.
Okay, so that's your second.
Yeah, it's something that I'm familiar with.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. One filmmaker or musician that comes from Africa that you would love to collaborate with.
Filmmaker.
Or musician. Or you can give us both.
Well, I would say one person. This was a song I heard when I first came here. I will tell you the name of it, but I can't think of the name of it because it has this. But it's with CC.
Okay.
And I'll pop it up, you know, in the edit. But I think that's a real name. But I would love to collaborate with her.
Okay.
Yeah. And then there's filmmaker wise. I actually haven't. Well, I'm already working with the filmmaker I want to work with.
Okay.
Ferguson Films.
Yeah, let's go.
So, and they based it here in South Africa in Johannesburg. So, I would think out of that we can build a strong relationship.
Okay.
Yeah.
Most surprising thing that you've learned about South African culture?
Well, I would say actually this whole that color mean culture versus skin color.
Yeah.
That's surprising for me.
Yeah.
That's one of the we talked about that a little bit, but to me that was very surprising.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Last one. One piece of advice that you would have for any aspiring African creative.
I go back to what I said before and reinvert it again. Perspective over perception. Take that, run with it.
We cooking. And you just been served. Thank you so much for watching this latest episode of the C.Cast. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe. We're trying to achieve a huge mission and we need you to invest in it. The best way to do that is by liking, sharing, and subscribing and leaving a comment down below. By doing that, you help the algorithm understand that we are offering content that is valuable and it will reach more people. There might also be someone out there that just wants to learn a lesson or who might be able to take something away from the podcast. Share it with them. And lastly, if you would like to be more involved in the community, if you want access to opportunities, knowledge from our experience in the digital marketing space, or to connect with other people who are like-minded and uplifting the continent, starting businesses and using tech and creativity to make them successful, join the WhatsApp group by scanning the QR code and we'll chat with you there. Until then, bye.
What makes a brand valuable is that it fills a need in someone's life. That brand's not a service or a product, it's a feeling.
Today we are speaking to an actual OG in the branding / design space. First person of color to win a Lurie's Design Award. Founding Grid Worldwide, SA's most awarded agency, key figure in rebranding.
I think it was our philosophy that got us through COVID. That was, for me, the catalyst for exponential growth.
The search of meaning is about creating that white space.
You've got to think out the box. You've got to constantly be thinking out of the box.
Everything is done has been unconventional.
Trusted in other people.
If people join me on the bandwagon of doing this brave, mad, crazy shit,
We can build this beyond. We can create a philosophy of make it mean something.
if something is familiar and magical, then I've done our job.